In the pantheon of prehistoric carnivores, the blueprint for an apex predator seems clear. Immense size, a powerful bite, and formidable, grasping forelimbs. But what if evolution produced a killer that discarded one of these core components entirely? This is not a hypothetical question. It is a case file from the late Cretaceous of Patagonia. Before us is an anatomical contradiction of the highest order. Now, let's dissect the evidence and solve the case of this bizarre survivor. Our subject is Carnotaurus sastrae, the meat-eating bull. The type specimen, discovered in 1984 by paleontologist José Bonaparte, is a masterpiece of fossilization, a nearly complete skeleton, articulated and preserved with skin impressions. This singular find provides an unprecedented window into the animal's biology. When we bring up a skeletal diagram, the initial assessment is straightforward. We see a large theropod measuring some 8 meters in length and weighing over 1.5 tons. The skull is deep, robust, and uniquely adorned with 2 prominent horns above the eyes, the feature that gives the dinosaur its name. These horns, likely covered in a keratin sheath, suggest either intraspecific combat, bulls locking horns for dominance, or a powerful visual display. The biomechanics of the chassis reinforce its predatory credentials. Analysis of the hind limbs reveals a creature built for speed. The femur, the thigh bone, is proportionally long, while the lower leg bones are gracile. This is the morphology of a runner. Furthermore, as we trace the vertebrae of the tail, we can identify large transverse processes, attachment points for the powerful cauda femoralis muscle. In this overlay, we can visualize how this muscle would have connected the tail to the femur, providing the primary propulsive force for each stride. The evidence converges on a single conclusion. Carnotaurus was a pursuit predator, an ambush specialist that relied on explosive speed to close the distance to its prey on the open floodplains of ancient South America. Its primary weapon was its skull, a battering ram and cutting tool in one. But as we move our analysis from the powerful chassis to the pectoral girdle, this picture of predatory perfection begins to fracture. Here, the evidence deviates from all logical expectation. We are confronted by the forelimbs. To call them small is a profound understatement. They are anatomically absurd. The entire arm, from the head of the humerus to the tip of the 4th digit, is shorter than the animal's skull. If a human had such proportions, our arms would barely extend past our shoulders. The forelimbs of Tyrannosaurus rex, long the subject of paleontological humor, appear powerful and statuesque by comparison. Herein lies the scientific paradox and the central question of our investigation. Why would an 8-meter-long, 1.5-ton pursuit predator possess forelimbs so drastically reduced they appear functionally inert? They are too short to reach the mouth, too fragile to grapple with prey, and too stubby to be used for pushing up from a resting position. They are vestigial appendages that defy simple explanation, an evolutionary enigma attached to an otherwise ruthlessly efficient killing machine. To solve this puzzle, we must move beyond simple observation and conduct a full biomechanical autopsy of the forelimb. This is not a matter of guesswork. The pristine preservation of the Carnotaurus fossil allows for a rigorous analysis of each bone, joint, and potential muscle attachment. It is here, in the fine details of the anatomy, that the functional story is told. Our investigation begins at the foundation, the pectoral girdle. Let's isolate the scapulocoracoid, the fused shoulder blade and its associated bone, in a 3D model. Counterintuitively, this structure is massive and robust. In many animals with reduced limbs, the corresponding girdle also shrinks, But in Carnotaurus, it is well developed, suggesting it anchored a significant muscle mass. The mystery deepens. However, the critical detail is the orientation of the glenoid, the socket where the arm articulates with the shoulder. Unlike in humans or other grasping theropods, where the glenoid faces downward and slightly outward to permit a wide forward reach, the glenoid of Carnotaurus is directed almost entirely out to the side and slightly backwards. Using a wireframe model to illustrate the range of motion, we can immediately see the consequences. The arm could not swing forward to any meaningful degree. Its primary plane of movement was lateral, sticking out from the body like a bizarre strut. Now, we move down the limb to the humerus, or upper arm bone. While short, it is remarkably stout, with a well-defined deltopectoral crest. This ridge of bone served as the anchor point for powerful chest and shoulder muscles. Again, the evidence points to strong musculature, but for a purpose that remains elusive. The paradox continues as we examine the forearm. The radius and ulna are drastically reduced, measuring less than a quarter of the length of the already short humerus. Let's zoom in on a diagram of the elbow joint itself. Here, the functional limitations become undeniable. The articular surfaces, the parts of the bones that meet to form the joint, are poorly defined. The structures that would form a hinge-like joint in a typical vertebrate are flattened and indistinct. The conclusion from this morphology is stark. The elbow of Carnotaurus was effectively immobile. There was little to no capacity for flexion or extension. The entire arm, from shoulder to wrist, was held in a permanently flexed, rigid position. The functional breakdown culminates in the hand, the manus. This is perhaps the most bizarre structure in the entire skeleton. Let's analyze a detailed schematic of its components. The wrist bones or carpals are not distinct, suggesting they were embedded in a cartilaginous plate, creating an inflexible unit. The hand itself possesses 4 digits, a primitive trait for a theropod of its time. But their configuration is nonsensical for any practical function. The first 3 metacarpals, the bones of the palm, are little more than splints. They terminate in tiny, non-clawed phalanges or finger bones. The 4th metacarpal is the most robust element in the hand, yet it terminates bluntly, possessing no phalanges at all. It is a finger that is all palm and no finger. The entire assembly could not grasp, claw, or manipulate anything. The fingers could not splay apart, nor could they converge. They were locked into a single, inflexible, paddle-like structure. To synthesize this data, we can now overlay the probable muscle groups onto our skeletal model. The large scapulocoracoid and stout humerus indicate powerful retractor muscles, allowing the entire arm unit to be pulled back with some force. But the near-total absence of significant muscle scars on the tiny radius and ulna confirms that the forearm and hand had no power of their own. The muscles did not exist to operate the hand because the hand was inoperable. Our biomechanical autopsy yields a clear verdict on the how. The forelimb of Carnotaurus was a rigid, inflexible strut with a small spatula-like hand at its end. It could not bend at the elbow or wrist. It could not reach forward or toward the animal's mouth. It could not grasp, rip, or hold. Its only significant movement was the ability to swing the entire rigid structure outwards and backwards from the shoulder. We have deconstructed a limb, and in doing so, we have deconstructed its function. The arm was, by almost every conceivable metric, useless for the tasks of predation, locomotion, or manipulation. This deepens the paradox into a profound evolutionary question. If it wasn't for anything, why was it there at all? Having established the profound functional limitations of the Carnotaurus forelimb, we arrive at the final and most challenging phase of our investigation: the why. If the arm was biomechanically useless for predation, what evolutionary pressures shaped its bizarre form? Here, we must synthesize the evidence and evaluate the competing hypotheses. One speculative hypothesis suggests a non-predatory function, such as social signaling or combat. Perhaps these small, strange arms, adorned with unique skin or feathers, were used in courtship displays. Another proposal posits they were used for intraspecific combat, not for grappling, but as small, sharp prods for flank-butting contests between rivals. In this scenario, the robust shoulder girdle would serve to anchor the arm against the body during impact. Let's run a simple simulation, overlaying our wireframe model onto two interacting individuals. While the arm can indeed project laterally, its fragility, immobile joints, and clawless digits make it a poor weapon. A significant impact would risk catastrophic damage to the limb itself. The display hypothesis, while plausible, is scientifically unsatisfying, as it is largely non-falsifiable and does not fully account for the specific and peculiar atrophy of the lower arm while the shoulder remains so robust. This brings us to the more parsimonious explanation, the one most strongly supported by the anatomical evidence. The arms of Carnotaurus are a profound example of vestigiality. They were not evolving towards a new function. They were the fading anatomical echo of a function that had long been abandoned. In the evolutionary lineage of the abelisaurids, to which Carnotaurus belongs, there was a clear and accelerating trend of forelimb reduction. As their skulls became shorter, deeper, and more powerfully muscled, the role of the arms in predation became entirely redundant. The head and neck became the sole instruments for capturing and processing prey. Evolution is not an intelligent designer that cleanly deletes unnecessary parts. It is a tinkerer that works with existing genetic blueprints. The genes that coded for the development of a functional theropod arm in the ancestors of Carnotaurus were still present. However, natural selection no longer favored individuals with large, energetically expensive arms. Instead, mutations that resulted in smaller, lighter forelimbs were either neutral or slightly beneficial, allowing more metabolic resources to be allocated to the potent hindlimbs and skull. The result is this strange chimera of anatomy, a robust, ancestral shoulder girdle, perhaps retained for anchoring chest muscles, fused to a highly derived atrophied limb. The arm isn't a tool, it's an artifact, a snapshot of evolution caught in the act of erasing a feature that was no longer needed. The verdict is not that the arms were useless, but that they were in the final stages of becoming obsolete. The case of Carnotaurus sastrae is more than just a story about a predator with tiny arms. It is a critical lesson in the nature of evolution itself. It reveals that the evolutionary path is not always a relentless march toward perfection, but a messy, contingent process of adaptation, specialization, and obsolescence. This bizarre survivor, a ruthlessly efficient predator burdened with the ghost of a limb, stands as a testament to how deeply evolution can write its history into the very bones of the living. What is your hypothesis? Do you think the arms served a hidden display function, or were they purely a vestigial artifact? Leave your analysis in the comments below. And if you want to own a piece of this investigation, the detailed 3D model of the Carnotaurus forelimb we analyzed is available for our patrons via the link in the description.